Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí.
Welcome back to the Camino Cafe, everyone. I am so happy that you are joining us tonight at the Pilgrim's table. And, I love having these conversations because I love speaking with pilgrims. And tonight we have Anne Bourne with us, and she was just here with me. We had a lovely evening on her most recent walk, and we got to sit and chat by the fireside. It was a pretty cold night, wasn't it, Anne?
Yeah, I was really happy to sit by the fire.
Yeah, it was cold. So Anne is Michigan based right now. So she's in the US, and she has walked the Camino. How many times are you at, like 15?
No, this was 10. This
10?
was 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you typically do a lot of winter Caminos. And so I really want to talk about all of that. And gosh, there's so many things I want to ask you, even after talking to you in length. So I thought maybe we would just start with, like, back when you first did your first Camino, what about it attracted you that you were like, yeah, this is something I really want to do? Because you could have done anything in your life. You could have gone on any trip. You could have done any vacation. What stuck out to you that you said, yeah, this is the thing I got to start doing?
Well, it's funny. The first time I walked anything on the Camino, I spent a single day with my son, and then I just said, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. This is not for me, but I'm interested. I just said, we can't do this. I'm going to stop. He wanted to go ahead, and I said, no, we're just going to get a taxi. I can't. I was sunburned. I had blisters. I was carrying too much. I had zero motivation. Mm-hmm. But what I found was that the motivation was, shall we say, latent. It was not that it was present that day, but it was still there. Mm-hmm. So that was in May of 2009. Okay. By October of 2010, I read this article in the paper about the Holy Door and that it was about to close because 2010 was the last holy year. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. That's kind of interesting. And I booked a flight for Christmas Day because I only had that week off from work. And I walked from Saria, and I ended up in front of the Holy Door an hour and a half before it closed on New Year's Eve.
Oh, wow.
What was it about that made me what was it that made me want to do it again? I had this idea that I really wanted to see the churches. I really, because I had studied medieval architecture at Columbia. I have a degree in art history, 2 degrees in art history for that matter. And I had this idea that I just wanted to see all the medieval churches. I thought, this is be cool. I'm going to walk, I'm going to see all the churches, and then I'll go through this Holy Door that everybody's talking about. It's a big deal. What I never realized was that every single last church was going to be closed. Every single one. So by the time I got about 2/3 of the way there, I was desperate. And I called my family. I said, I hate this. I can't stand this. There aren't any churches open. And this is why I wanted to do this. I wanted to see all the medieval churches. So either they were not medieval churches and they were open, or they were medieval churches and they weren't. And I kept walking up behind all of these sweet little buildings. And I knock on the door and I'm looking in the wind, nothing. Well, everybody knows the churches are never open.
Yeah.
But something happened when, by doing this, I just had to settle myself down and I say, okay, what can you do? What do you do? So I ended up at a bar and I asked the bartender, can you get me a cab? I want to go out to Villa de Donas. And I went out and saw that tiny little Templar church in the middle of the field. And the guy lets me out of the taxi and I'm walking around taking pictures of the outside. It's not open, but I thought, you know what? I'm close, and I got to take some nice pictures of the outside of the church. And I figured one of these days it'll have to be open and I'll have to go back. And while I'm doing this man comes up behind me with this giant key and says, can I tell you the history of the church? He opens the door and I step in and I go, Oh my goodness, this is so amazing because they have the Templar burial cover things, those stone images, and the baptistry thing. Oh my God, the baptismal font. And I got a stamp from there, and he just didn't stop talking about how the Celts and the thing and the decoration and the images and Ireland and why, oh my goodness, it was amazing. So then I was like completely refreshed, and I took off and I just kept going, and I never looked back, and that was it. But it was also in the winter. I have to say, walking this past winter, it was much more populated then because the door was about to close. So I anticipate that a similar crush of people would be walking in December that might not walk otherwise in December as they go to close the door. They're either people who haven't been able to get away before then, or people who actually want to attend the ceremony where they do close the door, which is beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Yes. Oh, the holy door, going through the holy door?
No, the ceremony when they close it.
Oh, the ceremony, yeah. Just the opening ceremony. I got to watch that, on Zoom this year or whatever. By
video. No. I saw that too. That was amazing. But it's equally moving and beautiful when they close it too.
Yeah. You touched on a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about. And one is your easygoingness. So I've thought a lot about this, Anne, since the last time we talked. And you shared this story, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about a little bit more. But you shared this story where you were in this little village and you wanted to spend the night at this certain albergue. And I think if I remember the story correctly, when you knocked on the door, they told you they were closed. And your response, as you described it to me, was, oh, okay, all right, well, thank you. And you just left. Yeah. And I'll let you tell what happened after that. But I first want to start with, was that the same Anne that walked the first time? Because you seem so calm and easygoing about how you walk. So I first want to ask, were you always like that? Were you always that easygoing?
Yeah, because I consider myself a guest. When I'm in Spain, it's, I have to be self-sufficient. I rely on the kindness of strangers, as Blanche Dubois would say. And I'm always tremendously grateful for whatever I can get. And if I can't get anything, I move on to what I can do. Because I think you have to be self-sufficient. You have to be able to manage expectations. And in this instance, it was pouring rain. I had been walking in the pouring rain for hours. And I just knocked on the door, and this man came out from the balcony, and I said, are you open? And he goes, no, everything's closed. I said, pharmacy? No, closed. The supermarket? Closed. Bar? No, closed. They might be open later, but no, they're not open. Is there any food in town? No, everything's closed. Just really abrupt and to the point. I mean, not angry or not upset or anything, but terse.
The facts only, ma'am.
Exactly. So I said, thank you very much. I understand it. Because ultimately, I think I expected that. When you walk in the middle of December, you kind of learn to expect that. Yeah. But I just came back to the corner, and I started to walk up the street, and he came out of the house and said, oh, come on in. And I had a bed, I had a shower, and he told me when the bar was going to be open. And he said, if the bar doesn't have any food, I'll cook dinner for you. And in the morning, he gave me a ride into town, and it was great. It was amazing. I mean, I wasn't trying to, be passive aggressive or anything by saying, oh, okay, come back to me. But it just happened that way. And it was really lovely.
Yeah, well, I think it's a beautiful story and a great lesson for everyone that wants to walk is that, making sure you said that you're self-sufficient and you're managing your expectations.
Yeah.
How did you learn that, or what gave you that idea that this was something that you needed to be like as a pilgrim?
Well, I wasn't new to traveling when I became a pilgrim. We had traveled quite a bit I did with my children when they were growing up. We'd been to a lot of different places. We'd been all over France. We'd we'd been to the islands, and I took my daughter to Mexico. We drove to Canada. I mean, so we were travelers, regardless of whether or not I was a pilgrim. And I think I took that away with me, that, as a traveler, you have to have respect for the place where you are. The same way you don't walk across the lawn of the guy 2 doors down because you have respect that that's his property. It's the same thing when you travel. You have to have respect that it is not your house, and that you should treat it kindly, whatever accommodations you're given.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really great lesson, a really great thing to inspire us all to walk more like that. Because if you can't manage your expectations, you're in trouble.
I'm a whiny guy, It's like, what do you mean you don't have an all vegan menu? What? I watched this guy at one of the places that I stopped go up to the bar, in a big popular bar, a lot of people, locals, pilgrims, whatever. And he's up there insisting that he can only eat this, that, and the other thing. So what did he have for dinner? I mean, I had chicken and fries and salad, and café con leche and some fresh fruit for dessert, blah, blah, blah. He had a big bowl of peas. And I thought, he's going to walk away from this cranky because A, it's not going to be that satisfying. And B, there's really no variety to a big bowl of peas. So, I thought, why don't you either plan ahead, find out where the supermarket is, find out where you can buy enough of your own food, the things that you have to have. I stayed at another place where the woman who was the albergueta said, I'm only going to have coffee for you in the morning for breakfast. Well, in that moment, I could have whined at her. Well, I want breakfast. How come I don't get a croissant a la plancha?
Right.
So, no, I had granola bars in my bag, and a couple of them with a cup of coffee was plenty. That was all I needed until I could get someplace else and get something different.
Well,
I'm
that's so
not
true.
going to complain to her.
That's so true about you, though. I mean, I can verify, everyone. She's telling it like it is. She showed up at my house and she had all kinds of stuff in her bag, and you were so well prepared. And I think that's a great thing to, tell everyone is, try to be self-sufficient. And how can you do that? Maybe go to the groceries if you have some kind of a certain eating dietary requirements, or even if you don't, just having something. I think one day you told me that you already had some boiled eggs, or, you were prepared that if anyone told you there was not going to be breakfast, you didn't need to whine because you had something with you.
Yeah. But it's the same thing with blankets. Why can't I have a blanket? I need a blanket. No, you have a sleeping bag, you make do. And if you have to sleep in all of your clothes in the sleeping bag, then that's what you have to do. But that just means that you weren't smart enough to figure out how to do this better. So you have to be self-sufficient. You have to assume that whatever you've got in your pack is going to sustain you, because there are too many times, especially if you walk in the winter, there are too many times when they have to. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about two things. One, so, of course, I follow you on all of your posts on social media and everything. And so your hashtag has been Little Old Lady Walking. And I was thinking today that when I think of you, I don't see a little old lady. I see a very strong woman always in front of me. And so
that's very flattering.
So I wondered, how did this hashtag come about? How did this name come about? And why did you select that?
Well, I picked it up in 2017 because I need, by that time, that's when hashtags were becoming a thing. I mean, in the big scheme of social media, hashtags were not much of a thing before that. I mean, I don't think everybody used them, and now really everybody does.
Right.
So I wanted a way for people that wanted to follow me when I walked, so that if they missed a post or missed some photos, they could just call up the hashtag and they would find it. Okay. So, just something like walking or Camino would pull up everybody's photos. Yeah. And I wanted something that was unique to me as a little old lady. So I thought Little Old Lady Walking would be it. And I probably told you about the time that I walked with my friend who's my age and we changed the hashtag to little old ladies walking. So if you want to see my route on the Camino Ingles, look at little old ladies walking.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to put that in the show notes so people can look that up.
I do recommend the Camino Ingles to everybody. It's a wonderful, wonderful walk.
I want to walk it so badly. I was hoping that I would get to this year. Why do you say that? Why do you want to recommend that to folks?
Well, it has a couple things going for it. One is that you start at the water where the English pilgrims would have arrived by boat, which is kind of cool because then you get this sense of the history of the route and the history of English pilgrims, and then how it was cut off, and they didn't come back. I mean, for hundreds of years. It was only the end of the 19th century when the first English pilgrims came back to Spain. And in fact, I think, as I remember the story, I think they ended up taking the train or a bus into Santiago. I don't think they actually walked, but they did come from England specifically as English pilgrims. So I like that part. The other is that you can do a complete Camino from start of it to end of it in Santiago in 6 days, which is wonderful. And everybody says, oh, I only have a week. I want to start in Sarria. Well, you and everybody else. But if you go up to Ferrol and start there, the towns are marvelous. Neda, Ponte de Ume, Betanzos, Hospital de Bruma, Sihueros. They're wonderful, wonderful little towns. And you walk, instead of like on the Camino Frances, there are a lot of completely closed up, nothing is going on, 3 house towns.
Yes.
But on the Camino Ingles, when you get to a town, you get to a town with restaurants, shops, and the church is open, which is my favorite. And the towns are really, really, they really stood out to me the way, I mean, there are a number of towns on the Camino Frances, and certainly on the Camino Portugues, which I've also walked, and the Primitivo, there's beautiful towns. But in this instance, I really remember details about the towns, and I can't say that about all of the places that I've been.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I recommend it. And it's way less populated.
Yes. And especially coming in.
It picks up more people at Hospital de Bruma, because if you walk from Coruña, that's where it meets up with the walk from Ferrol.
Oh, okay.
If you walk from Ferrol, you get your first stamp at the water's edge at the tourist office, because you have to net the 100 kilometers to get to Compostela.
Yeah, so you have to start there. Right?
You have to have walked 25 kilometers in your country. And there are routes in England, and I believe in Ireland as well, where you can document that I've walked 25 kilometers in my country. And then you add it to A Coruña. I love the walk from Ferrol. I stayed at the Parador in Ferrol too, which was gorgeous.
I bet that was nice.
It was really nice, yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about that some more, but first I wanted to ask you, you have walked a lot of these winter Caminos, yes. And I think at one point, I've seen you talk about Advent Caminos and things
yes.
like that. So what got you interested in doing that? I understand that first year why you did it, because the Holy Door was closing, and then was it just because you loved it so much that time, or what is it? Because winter, I'm watching these pilgrims walk by. It's not the easiest time. There is snow and there are challenges. I remember when you walked, there were some icy days.
Yeah.
So what attracts you to walking in the winter time frame versus maybe some of the other times? Well,
a couple of things. I grew up in Michigan, and I'm a January baby. So my tendency, I tend to gravitate to winter. I really enjoy winter. I get winter. I understand winter. What I don't get is July and heat and sunburn and shorts and t-shirts. I don't get that. That really doesn't mesh with my personality. I'm definitely a winter baby. And I loved that there were fewer, even though there were more people in 2010 than there were just now, there's still way fewer people. And I walked a section of the Camino Frances in May, a couple of years ago, and I didn't like the idea that everybody was trying to get where they were going. In the winter, because there's so few people, you really do have all day to get there. And there's something tremendously liberating about that. Mm-hmm. It's very freeing to recognize that I'm in this town and I'm going this far and I've got all day to get there. And I don't think that's a mindset that you carry with you when you walk in the summer. Yeah. You're hustling, you're bustling, you're trying to get to this place. You know, maybe they're going to run out of beds. You want to get there before the guy behind you, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work for me. I love the solitude. I love the quiet. I mean, it's so intensely quiet. You can't even imagine. Every once in a while, you'll hear a bird like way off in the distance, or sometimes if you're on the flight pattern that goes in and out of Santiago, if you cross that flight pattern, you'll see planes. Yeah. But other than that, you know, there are moments when I would just stop. And if I didn't hear my feet moving, I didn't hear anything at all. And it's just amazing. Yeah, that it's never silent, but it certainly is quiet. And that's fabulous.
Yeah, I could imagine, you know, because other times of the year, there is that mad race to get to the next town. You know, everybody's kind of following the same stages. And, you know, if it's a busy, busy time, especially on the Frances, there could be a chance you could get to that next town and maybe not be any availability. So, you know, you see people getting up early in the morning, going before there's even light. And that kind of just creates a mood where I found it was hard on some mornings to just relax and go my own pace of getting out the door, because I'm watching pilgrims leaving, you know, super early in the morning. And you start thinking, okay, well,
yeah, no, people will leave at 5 and 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I just walk now, I waited till 8:30 because the sun doesn't come up till 8:45.
Yeah, it's dark in the morning here.
Yeah, you know, and I started in November, so it got progressively darker as I kept walking. And I did walk with ice and snow, but you know what? I grew up with ice and snow. I get it. I understand ice and snow.
Oh yeah, I mean, you didn't complain one time. You had walked, I think, a couple of days in icy conditions, and I'm like, oh my gosh, were you all right? And you're like, fine.
Yeah. No, the thing that I loved was I had this sleet blobs. I don't know what you call it. It was like sleet blobs that kept hitting my face. Like, yeah. Well, sleet is one thing. I mean, sleet is like granular, right? It's small. Yeah. These were like blobs. So I told my family, I said it was like having somebody throw chewed gum at your face, because it would just hit you and stick and then slide. Yeah, it was funny. When I got into Santo Domingo de la Calzada, this woman who walked behind me came into the albergue, and a woman from Spain, from Asturias. And the only thing she said, which I thought really summed up the godforsaken weather that day, because it was like 30-mile-an-hour winds and sleet, and then it would rain, and then it would snow, and then it would sleet. So she walks into the albergue, she looks at the guy behind the desk, and she just says, "Fatal." Yes, that's the only word that describes this weather. Fatal.
Fatal. Oh, that's great. So now that you've done so many of these winter ones, if somebody is contemplating coming in the winter, do you have any special tips that you would say, hey, make sure you do these extra little things or think about these things before doing a winter or an Advent?
Yeah, no. Well, Advent is marvelous because it does back it up to the entire month before Christmas. And I like that. I like that time of year, regardless of where I am. Layers, you know, a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm going to get, you know, like, you would never bring a sweater like this, no heavy anything, but you get super, super thin, stretchy poly layers, and you wear one over the other. And the combination of the nylon and the spandex will trap body heat, and 2 layers weighs like 4 ounces. And then you're fine, because what happens is it can start out in the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit in the morning, but it'll go up to maybe the 50s during the day if it's sunny. So you have to be able to layer and unlayer at the same time. I always bring a Gap long sleeve t-shirt too, cotton t-shirt, which is good under and over other layers. And I also brought a thing this trip that I hadn't taken before, which was a long sleeve t-shirt with a hood. And that was marvelous, because if it started to get windy or chilly, I could just put the hood up without having to fish my hat out of my backpack or my pocket. Yeah. And then I could either add the hat, again, it was another layer. So I really liked that, but it was also good just to have something around my neck.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to have a sleeping bag, certainly.
Yep.
I did learn an interesting trick about what you do if you have to sleep in an albergue with no heat.
Yes. What do we do?
Because that happens. Your temptation would be to put the sleeping bag on and to put blankets on top of you.
Yeah.
But in fact, I learned this trick in Maria Seco from, you know who, the guy in Maria Seco at the albergue.
Yes.
What you do is you get 2 blankets. You put the blanket underneath you, and then you Oreo yourself into your sleeping bag under another blanket. So you have blankets on top and bottom. And the difference was dramatic. I was suddenly just completely toasty warm, where if you put the 2 blankets on top of you, you don't have that buffer on the underside. Yes. And effectively, it kind of seals you in like a hot pocket, because you have the blanket underneath you and the blanket over meeting at the sides of your sleep. Anyway, so yeah, yeah. But the last thing is, you absolutely have to call ahead to get a bed. You cannot show up. You cannot email. You cannot rely on websites that say something is open, because sometimes that's not the case.
Yes.
Because albergues can close just because it's Tuesday. And the classic was, I had made a reservation on booking.com for an albergue in Campo Naraya. And I get to Campo Naraya and I see the albergue ahead of me, and I'm like, great, it's a privado. You know, I've got the reservation, I'm all set, I'm ready to go in the door. And then the big sign on the door says closed on Thursday. And I went, damn. Of course. Yeah. Why did they take the reservation? And the simple answer was because it was Wednesday. I didn't know what day it was. And I'm standing there losing my mind that the place is closed. But in fact, it was open. And I spent the night there. I was the only pilgrim in this huge, beautiful dormitory.
Yeah. Christmas miracle right there that it's actually open.
But, right? You know, booking.com is tremendously helpful. There are a lot of places. Typically, the municipal is the place where you can walk in if you have identified that you are A, in a town that has a municipal albergue, and B, that it isn't just famously closed on all of the websites.
Yep.
So if it's open, odds are really, really good you can just walk in, especially, you know, I can't recommend that in June or July, but certainly in December.
Yeah. And I think the key is, are they open? And, you know,
well, yeah, but you also have to be in a town that has one.
Exactly. So, you know, a couple of variables there that you got to really, and, you know, I found using the apps is certainly very helpful. And I was going to say, you know, for folks that haven't walked a Camino in the winter, you know, this is the time of year where the folks that support We Pilgrims, they start wanting to get some time off because they've been working, you know, nonstop and working really hard to support us. So it is likely that they could be taking some time off. I know just where I am, you know, I might decide I'm going to get up and go get a coffee at one of the local spots here, and I'll walk down and go to push open the door and they've closed for the day, you know, and also all of the Spanish holidays, you know, there's a lot of them. And sometimes if there's a holiday on Thursday, that means they're going to be closed also Friday and Monday, or some things maybe. So you got to always be watching that.
And definitely in front of Three Kings Day.
Yes.
When I wanted to get a COVID test in Madrid before I flew home, the place where I went to get the test was closed from December 31st through January 6th. So it's not like they're just closed on the day. Yep. They're closed for the week. And if you looked up all of the places we could get COVID tests at clinics in Madrid, they all said the same thing. Luckily, I needed it on the 30th, but if I needed it on the 31st, because I had a day you have to have a test a day before. You can be tested at the airport too, but I never trust that. And I don't want to spend 3 hours waiting for a test at the airport.
Just did that at the Madrid airport, by the way.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to, I just want to, I don't mind the money. I will pay the money. I just want to have the thing ready to go when I'm ready to go.
Yep, yeah. That's smart. Because the line was really long.
Yeah, but what you said, you know, on either side of a holiday are also holidays.
Yeah.
There's one in August 15th, where there's like 3 days of holidays, and on either side there could be holidays. At which point, if you expect anything to be open, you could be really disappointed. And this goes back to being self-sufficient. I saw a post from a guy while I was walking that said, see this bag of chips? That's what I had for dinner because the restaurant was closed. And I thought, get creative. Yeah. Somebody had to give you your room. Ask them to get you a cab, get a taxi, go someplace and get dinner. You have to get creative. You have to think outside.
Yeah, you do. And not expect that everything's going to be just the way that you want it to be. I'm
thinking of the time my two daughters and I walked from Leigh in December and a couple of years ago, and we came into a town and it looked like everything was closed. So I just asked the waiter at the restaurant, the cafe where we got lunch, and he says, let me ask my mom. Well, he's the waiter, his mom is the cook, right?
Of course.
So he asked the mom, and the mom's cousin put the three of us up in her house. So you never know. But I always say this: you talk to the bartender, you talk to a waiter, you talk to the cook. They always know someplace for you to stay and someplace to eat. But you have to be able to do that.
Yeah, you have to be willing to ask. And I do find that when you ask, or there's usually everything's figure outable at some point.
Oh,
right?
Most definitely. Yeah.
You just got to kind of keep your head about yourself, your emotions in control, and really think through, like, what are you going to do in this situation? Because things are closed around the holidays. That is a fact. And there are a lot of holidays here. And you can't expect it to be like your home country or what you're used to all the time. It's going to be different. And I think you kind of said that at the beginning.
This is the other thing that I tell people, though. Just because everything's closed doesn't mean everything's disappeared. And I have had people open an entire pension for me because the pension didn't go anywhere. You just have to find the guy who has the key, who doesn't mind opening it up for a person or two people, whatever you got. So it's not like all of this, it can look closed. Like you can walk into a town and it looks closed. Mm-hmm. But all you have to do is talk to the bartender and say, I just really need a place to spend the night. Or if you're not comfortable talking on the phone in Spanish, maybe you can communicate to him. Could you call someone and find a bed for me? Do you know someone who will be open for dinner? And you learn so much doing this.
Oh, you do. And, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say your skill level goes up.
Yes. Right. And I do find that a lot of the supporters along the way, they are talking to one another. So here in Ravenel, if one is going to close, they usually tell the other one. And if they haven't, it's because they forgot, like something weird happened. But they're usually communicating with one another. Hey, like, we're going to be closed this day. Are you guys going to be open? Like, they care about the Pilgrims. They want to support us. It may feel at times that that's not what's happening, but it really is. And like you said, if you just start asking, somebody usually will come around with some solution for you that will work, but you have to ask, and you got to be kind, and you got to, be flexible too. You might.
And you also have to be able to take no.
Yes.
They can just say no, and that's okay. Right. And then you just keep going. That just means that you didn't think ahead enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, you have the night before, you have to know where you're going. You have to know where you can get a bed, because you might say, well, I'd really like to walk X number of kilometers. Okay. So I walk X and there's nothing there. Okay. So do I walk more than X or do I walk less than X? And my recommendation is always walk less.
Yes.
Because walking more may mean that by the time you get there, you are completely beat. It can also be that you've shorted the day because, like I said, the sun comes up in December, 8:45, 9 o'clock. That means it sets at 4:30, 4:45. Yeah. So you do not have all of that much daylight to maneuver. You really have to know where you're going.
Yeah.
And like I said, you do have to get somebody on the phone. If they don't pick up, it's because they're closed. It's not because they didn't go shopping. No, it's because they're closed.
Yeah.
Totally. And if they don't write back to your email, it's because they're closed, not because they haven't gotten to their email yet.
Right. Yeah. So you better start figuring out a solution because.
Yeah, you have to get a person on the phone.
Yeah.
And I recommend Wise Pilgrim to everybody. That's the app that I use. Wise Pilgrim is insanely fabulous. It has a map in case you miss the arrows. That's the thing about snow, is that the snow can cover the arrows.
Yeah, how do you do that? And
Yeah.
I'm really curious about that, because I mean, I feel like I miss arrows in the best of weather,
Yeah, I do
because
too. I do
I'm thinking
too.
about something or whatever. And
Yeah.
I've always wondered about that, because I've seen the famous pictures, in Osebero, where
Yeah.
you can't, there's 3 feet of snow. So how do you do that? How do you not get lost during the winter?
Well, the thing is that you kind of have to know where you're going.
Okay.
You will find arrows that are on like signposts and street lamps and fences and houses that are up above the snow. But if you're looking for the ones in the road, those can be covered. So you always have to know. But the Wise Pilgrim app has this wonderful map. You just tap it, and what happens, it opens it up and it locates you, and you can see the Camino. So you can see if you're right on it, or if you're like not really right on it. At which point, if you pinch it open, you can see, okay, so at the next left, I can go da, 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 and then I will find my way back.
Okay.
But the Wise Pilgrim also has links to booking.com. It will say, like, if you want to go to Molina Seca, click here to book a room in Molina Seca. And you have to really take that seriously. Yeah. Like I said, showing up in Molina Seca, you're liable to find that everything is closed, and that you have to keep walking, which you don't necessarily want to do, depending on what time of day you get there, or what kind of condition you're in, either mentally or physically or both.
Yeah.
So that's tremendously helpful. But he also has all of the phone numbers, so you can just tap it and call and say, hi, I just need a bed for this evening.
And that's so convenient.
And the answer is typically no, we're closed.
But I know for myself, even in the best of weather, it just gives me a feeling of peace where I can really enjoy my walk more when I know that I have booked ahead. But that's just me. I know that there are many pilgrims who in the summer, they don't like doing that. They kind of want to leave it to happenstance. I think we right now are kind of in a different situation. I don't know, you can't speak to what it's going to be like this summer, but even when I was walking, that was in October, I still felt like I wanted to book ahead, because not everything is open like it used to be. And, things are a little bit different still. So who knows for the summer, but those apps I think are fantastic. I used one as well, the whole walk. I used Camino Ninja, also Wise. And
I had trouble with Camino Ninja. There were lots of times when it just didn't open up. Yeah. And I had used Wise Pilgrim before on other routes. I really enjoy it. But in a month of walking, I probably just wandered in without a reservation. I'm going to say maybe a half dozen or more times. I mean, I really was able to do that. Yeah. I did it in Uterga. I did it in Castro Jerez. I did it in Sirauquí, Santo Domingo de la Calzada, Burgos. Yeah, so there are places where you can do that, but you have to know that.
Yes.
You can't just wander in and not know. You have to know everything. You really have to know everything.
Yeah, totally agree.
That's not a bad thing. That makes you more self-sufficient.
It's good being self-sufficient.
Yep.
So I kind of want to turn the table a little bit and talk about your writing. So, you've written several books, and I think you might have them there. So if you want to hold them up, you can show everybody. I do. Because their covers are beautiful.
Thank you. I wrote this. It's backwards. This is Buen Camino, Tips from an American Pilgrim. I wrote it specifically because I did not want American pilgrims to be too afraid to go. I hear, oh, that's on my bucket list. Oh, I'm going to do that when I retire. Oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't have anybody to go with me. And, I spell it out. When I first started walking, I thought I needed 3 things. I needed money, I needed time, and I needed companionship. And I would have money and time and no companionship. I'd have money and companionship and no time. And I went around and around and around and around until I finally realized the money, if I can go down to Columbus Circle in New York and tap dance for an hour, I can make money. I can always find the time. I can, book a vacation or make a plan, and I don't need companionship. I can go by myself.
Yeah.
So most of the times that I've walked by myself. And I wanted to express that to people and say, look, American pilgrims, get a plane ticket. Don't think you have to train by, walking around Central Park in your boots with your hat on. That's ridiculous. You just get a plane ticket and take off.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the walking on our own, because I think, there are probably several women listening to our interview. And what would you say to women who, I think in the US, I can't speak for other countries necessarily, but I know for the US, sometimes it's not real comfortable to walk by ourselves, say like on the Appalachian Trail or something like that. So what would you say to encourage women about the Camino if that's one of the things that's kind of holding them back from making the decision?
Well, I can tell you that Spain is tremendously safe as a country in general, as far as tourists and travelers to Spain. But I can also tell you, I read this interesting story yesterday. I'm reading this book by Georgiana Goddard King that was published in 1920.
Oh, I saw a post on that. Yeah.
Yeah, where she was accosted in some unfortunate manner by a priest while she was taking notes in a church in Spain. I can't say that that's not going to ever happen. It was just depressing to me that 100 years ago, that was still a topic for women. You like to think that in 100 years we've come way ahead, but we haven't in so many ways. So I would just say, if you are not typically accosted by men in the United States, you will typically not be accosted by men anywhere else. There are some Arab countries where you may get glances. But in fact, when I was in Morocco, the glances I got were from women, not from men. Men ignored us and women glared at us. So I don't know. It's traveling as a woman is always something you have to take seriously, but I've never felt unsafe in Spain. Dogs and their owners, you just talk to the dog's owners, say, I don't like dogs, hang on to your dog. I joked with a friend of mine about being afraid of hunters, because as you're walking in December, it's hunting season, and you can hear the shots in the distance, and you go, I don't know, should I duck now? Should I run for cover? I don't know. But in fact, they're nowhere near the Camino, because there's always somebody walking. That's the thing. 365, there's always somebody walking.
Yeah.
You carry your phone with you. There's an app that I have never used called Alert Cops.
Yeah.
Where you can designate someone, and it lets people know where you are. And if you need help, you can get help. But I've really never had any, in all of these years, since 2009, I really haven't had any instance where I felt unsafe. Like I said, the hunters kind of give me the willies, but I don't consider myself unsafe,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. And
I much prefer walking by myself.
Yeah.
As much as I say I like walking with people, I will start out with people and I will send them ahead, because I'm famously very slow.
Yeah.
And we'll meet up later. Even when I walk with my children, I send them ahead and we meet up later, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I do a variety. Like I'll walk with people for a while, and then I was like, hey, I need a little time, or let's kind of separate. But one of the things that I have found, I have not walked in the winter, so I cannot speak to that the way that you can. But I feel like there's usually somebody ahead of you or somebody behind you, and if you're feeling just funny, or you just kind of need to see some people, if you just walk a little faster or slow down, there's going to be somebody bookending wherever you are on the trail, at least during the busy parts of the year.
That's not necessarily true in the winter.
Yeah.
There were days when I saw no one.
Wow.
Partly because I would start a little bit later and people would go ahead of me. So there were several days when I saw absolutely no one until I got into the town. The funny thing was that, I would be a little starved for conversation. So I thought, well, you know what, tonight I'm going to stay at the albergue. And I'd get to the albergue and be the only one there. So but I'll talk to anybody. I talk to cab drivers. I talk to the waiters. I talk to the guy behind the bar. I'll talk to the cook. I had a great conversation with one of the cooks at a restaurant that I was at, Everybody wants to know, why are you walking by yourself? That's the first question. Where are you from?
That's
and
their
what are you
first
walking by?
question.
Yeah, why are you walking by yourself and where are you from?
That's
Typically,
interesting
yeah.
because
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
a pilgrimage that you normally do walk by yourself. So that's funny that that's a question that's coming to you, especially from people that are, working, say, at one of the restaurants. You think they're just surprised, or maybe they just see
I don't
groups
know.
of
It could be
pilgrims so
because I'm a
often?
little lady, like I should have some kind of support staff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, and I've had women ask me, why are you walking by yourself? Yeah, and then where are you from? And the combination of I'm from the United States and I'm walking by myself is like, this does not compute.
They expect you to be different in that situation, huh?
Yeah, or just have somebody. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so your second book is about the cathedral.
Yes.
So let's hold that up.
Second book is about the cathedral. This is this book, Cathedral. Yay.
Yay.
And this is fun because what I do is I give you maps. And in the map, it'll say, if you stand here, this cool thing happened right where you're standing. And if you stand, let's see, here, this cool thing happened. So I go all around the map of the church and the cloister and the plazas around the church. And I say, if you stand here, let me tell you what happened right where you're standing. So I tell the story of the people. Because, I say this all the time, pilgrims only remember the people. You're never going to, if somebody said, where did you start this morning? You're going to go, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know. And where are you going today? Blank, So, but somebody will say, where did you get breakfast? And you'll say, well, there was this nice place. And the waiter, or the cook came over to talk to me. You're going to remember the people. So that's why the book is based in the people. So I write about these incredible people through the history of the building that have been right where you could be standing. And I did that this summer. I was in Santiago in July with a friend of mine. And I told her, I said, we're going to stand right here on this staircase in the cathedral. I said, do you know that we are standing right where Cosimo de' Medici number 3 stood on his way to mass? And it was raining, So the two of us are standing there going, oh, this is really cool. I feel like I can see the church the way he saw it. I have his view of, Rosalia de Castro wrote poetry in the back of the cathedral. So I can tell you, if you stand right here, you can be right where she was when she wrote that poem. I think that's exciting. I think that's really cool. Because I think that the ghosts of the building are still there. I think they're all still there. Federico Garcia Lorca was there. He spent an entire day touring that building with one of the priests. And it was on that trip that he decided to change his major to writing. Do you know what Garcia Lorca's college major was before it was writing?
No, what?
He was a piano player.
Really?
He was a musician. Yeah. And, it fueled a lot of his writing. It fueled a lot of his life. He published popular Spanish songs because he was afraid that they would be forgotten and lost. And there are actually, you can find actual recordings of him playing the piano on the internet. Wow. And he, at that moment, he was 18 years old. It was a tour from the University of Granada. It was in that moment that he decided to change his major from piano playing to writing. And then he came back later to Santiago with his acting company, which was kind of exciting too. He always wanted to do a big poetry festival around Rosalia de Castro, but it didn't happen.
Wow. You just reminded me of something. When I was in Santiago last week, not on the wall of the cathedral, but near it, very near it, there's like a glass case, and there are all these different kind of banners with different study areas, architecture, biology, or whatever. And someone had told this person that a lot of students that go to the Santiago University will go to that and close their eyes and then point, and wherever they point, that's the major they're going to pick. Have you heard about this?
No, that's wonderful.
I'll have to get them to get a picture for you and show, because we don't know if it's true or not, but that's what she had been told. But I was going to say that I love, you and I were talking when you were here, that you really, you set out to become an expert about the cathedral. And I think that's super cool. And, I can attest that recently I was with someone and they said, oh, I noticed something had changed after the renovations. I wonder why, what's going on. I said, I have somebody I can ask. So I messaged you, and man, not only did you know, Anne, so the friend had this photo from years ago. You were able to answer immediately, and you had a photo of what is now in place of what they were asking about. And I was just like, I knew you knew a lot about the cathedral, but at that moment, it was just like how fast you did it, and you had a picture of it. And so I wanted to congratulate you on, like, you are an expert on the cathedral. And, I want you to maybe kind of share with everyone that, this was no easy task. You had to spend a lot of time to study this. And of course you have your formal education that certainly is a help, but that wasn't about the specific cathedral. So maybe just share with viewers and listeners, like, how did you go about doing this? How, like, what kind of work did you have to put into knowing the things that you know about the cathedral?
Well, it's interesting. The inspiration for that came from a writers' conference that I went to actually here in my hometown in Michigan. Mm-hmm. The Southwest Michigan Writers' Conference a couple of years ago had a speaker, and the speaker was encouraging writers and indie authors and people who were looking for agents or people who were looking to be published. She said, it's not enough that you become the author, you have to become the expert. Mm-hmm. You have to be the one that people want to go to for information. So in order for me to do that, I had to exhaust the literature on the cathedral. I had to completely exhaust the literature on the cathedral. It wasn't sufficient that I read a book or went there and took pictures. I had to exhaust the material. So ironically, because of COVID, I ended up writing the entire book here on my back porch in Michigan because I couldn't get on a plane. I couldn't go to Spain. I couldn't get into the cathedral. And even at that time, the masses had been moved to the Church of San Francisco because of the renovation. So the whole thing, kind of threw it up in the air, and I had to rely on what I could do both as an art historian and as a historian and as a pilgrim to flesh out these stories. On the one hand, I really got some tremendous help from my friends who said, well, I don't know, do you know the story about so-and-so? And I went, no, tell me more. And then I would do the research. And I ended up reading dozens and dozens of academic articles. And then my favorite was, if I had questions after I wrote the articles, I would find the author. And in some cases, I would find authors from the 90s who had published articles about someone who had a historical relationship with the building. And I'd write to them, say, hi, I've read your story about so-and-so in the building, and I'm writing this book, and I want to write about her, I want to write about him, but I have these questions. And then I got answers from everybody, which was really, really so gratifying. That, in one case, I wrote about the musicians of the cathedral. And I wrote about one guy who was a major music director in the cathedral. And I wanted to highlight a couple of things about him. So I wrote to the woman who did her PhD dissertation on him. And she sent me private recordings of his music, so that I could actually sit on my porch here in Michigan and listen to his music, the music that he wrote as music director in the cathedral. I never could have done that any other way. I just, like I said, you have to get creative. It's what we do as pilgrims. We are self-sufficient and we get creative. Yeah. And I literally had to exhaust the material. I had to read everything. I had to get in touch with people. Thankfully, I had the assistance of the museum director of the cathedral museum director, who was enormously helpful to me. He is a brilliant art historian, and he's in kind of the best possible world as an art historian because they keep digging things up. They keep finding things in that building, and he gets to go in and go, okay, wow, we got new stuff. Okay, this is cool. You know, it's not like he has to wait for a donor to donate the Picasso. They're uncovering the equivalents of Picassos every time they do renovations or open a wall or, look behind the screen, and oh my God, there's, more sculpture.
Can you think of anything specific that's happened in the last couple of years that that was of interest?
Most definitely. A couple of years ago, they found a complete torso sculpture that they have now attributed to Master Matteo or his workshop. Typically, if you're going to decommission a sculpture, you lop off the head and it desanctifies it if it's headless. So it wasn't surprising that it was missing the head. But the thing was that they found it behind a wall. When they renovated the staircase in the front of the building, they found these stone tablets that have scenes of the massacre of the innocents.
Yeah.
And it still has a lot of the polychrome on it. Those are actually on display in the museum right now. They just keep finding things. It's like, I keep imagining that somebody's gonna, that he's sitting, the museum director is sitting at his desk and he gets a phone call. It's like, I think you should come down here. I think you might want to see this. And it's like, yes, I'm doing it.
It sounds like an Indiana Jones kind of move, like he's in this world, like you said.
For an art historian, it's the best of all possible worlds.
I was just thinking, Anne, what was it like? So you're writing this book during COVID on your back porch, you're doing all this research, and then you come back to Spain, the holy doors open, you walk in and you see the cathedral after major renovations. What was going through your mind? What was going through your heart? How did that feel?
Well, I melted, of course. I felt like I was coming home. I felt like I had been exiled and that I was finally free to return to my home country. And, being able to go in and look at the things that I wrote about was just a thrill. Because I write about a lot of the chapels, not that I'm writing about the chapel, but I'm writing about the guy who's associated with that chapel. I remember walking into the Pilar Chapel and to see that black funerary plaque on the wall from the Archbishop from Mexico, and going into the chapel. Oh, this was so funny. They've taken the confessionals out of the church now. So if you want to have your confession heard, you have to go into one of the chapels, which is brilliant because now the chapels, a lot of them are open.
Yeah.
So this one chapel that I wanted to go into is where Doña Mencía de Andrade is buried. And I wrote about Doña Mencía in my book. So I wanted to go in and take some photographs, but there was a priest in there hearing confessions in French. So I waited and I waited and I waited. There was nobody in line to have their confession heard. And when the last guy came out, I went in and I said, do you speak English? No, French. I thought, okay, I can do this. So I had this whole long conversation with him in French. And I told him, I said, I've written this book and I've written about this lady that's buried here. And I just want to take some pictures if that's okay. He says, not a problem. He gets out of my way. And I thought, well, I got to pay him back for this. So I told him the whole story. I told him about Doña Mencía de Andrade, about how she learned how to write so that she could sign her own contracts. I wrote how she wanted to donate all of her money to the church, and her husband wrote a letter to the Archbishop saying, don't take her money, right? I told him this whole story in French, thanked him very much, and took off. You have to get creative.
Now, he didn't make you do a French confession?
No, that was my opening salvo. I said, no, I do not need to have my confession heard in French or any other language.
And how did you come up with this creative idea? Because I'm always thinking, I've talked to you about that. I want to write a book, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, what hasn't been done? What's a creative? That was a really creative idea of how to present the cathedral. Like, how did that come to you?
Well, two things. One was when I started to think about writing the book, I thought, well, you probably have guides to the cathedral, because I meant it to be a guide for pilgrims specifically. you probably have guides to the cathedral. I have 4 of them, and I hadn't read one of them. I had bought them in the gift shop, put them in my luggage, thinking I'd read it sometime, and I never did. The spines were just the same way they were when the book was made, right? Never read. Why? Because they would say, in 1185, da 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 da, and then in 1211, this happened, and then in 1705, and I thought, oh my God, I can't stand this. I want to know. I don't want to know that you built the chapel. I want to know why you built the chapel. I want to know who you are and what brought you to this moment in your life where you wanted to build this chapel. I wanted to know about the guys. So that was the A part. The B part was, or the second part, when I worked in the Pilgrim's office in 2014, I had a lot of free time to go into the cathedral, and I spent every day in the cathedral. And I kept walking around, and I was taking photographs. And I didn't realize this until I went back to look for photographs, that I had taken so many of the sepulchres in the building.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to know who they were and why they were buried there. And there was nothing about it. If you want to read any of the guidebooks that they sell in the gift shop, you could read about the Chapel of Pilar, and they'll tell you when it was built and what materials were made and how big it is, what they use it for, and blah, blah, blah. But they don't tell you about the guy who's up, they're praying for eternity. It's sculpted praying for eternity in this chapel. They don't tell you why it's dedicated to Maria del Pilar. They don't tell you why. And I wanted to know why. And it came full circle from 2014 to when I started writing this at the end of 2019, that was really what I wanted to know about the people. So now I can put you in the building where almost 36 of these amazing people stood. You can be absolutely standing on the very spot where they stood. And I want you to get that sense of history swirling around you, that somehow their essence and the ghost of them is still there. I imagine that you can probably still get a whiff of Eva Perón's perfume, that kind of.
Wow.
I wanted the immediacy. I wanted the stories of the people.
Yeah. Well, you gave me an even better answer than I was even looking for. And I think, so many people, it seems, wanting to write a Camino book or have written a Camino book. And I really wanted our viewers and listeners to hear that, when they buy your book, you've spent a lot of time doing research. This isn't just I went from here to there and this is what happened today. This is a book packed with research that goes beyond casual research and is a one-of-a-kind book. And I wanted people to hear that. And I think you beautifully illustrated why it's worth them buying the book and learning something beyond, a timeline.
Yeah. But,
like you said, how many books do we all have like that we haven't even opened? Yeah.
Oh, no, you don't. And you look at the pictures and you go, yeah, I remember that. But it doesn't tell, and people say, well, what can you tell me about this chapel? Well, I don't know who's buried there. Let me tell you about who's buried there. Yeah. Because I want to keep directing it to the people. But I also recommend Kindle, because on Kindle you can pop open the maps. You can make the maps bigger so that you make sure you're standing right there.
Ah, perfect. Okay, I'll make sure that
the book. Yeah. So the book is called "If You Stand Here." If you stand here.
Perfect.
And it's meant to place you in that spot. Because that's what appeals to me. That's what it appeals to me.
Well, it's interesting to me that also is the angle you took, because at the end of the day, like you just said, our walk is always about the people too.
Yeah.
I can just look back at my photographs and just see a photograph of somebody from a pilgrim that I walked with from a particular day. And from that photo alone, all of a sudden I can start telling you about all the things that happened around that.
Yeah.
But it always ends up being about the people. And I love how you incorporated that into the book, to the very place that we're all walking to.
Yeah. Well, see, the other thing was that it kills me that people walk in and look around and go, okay, it's big, it's old. Now what do we do? Want to get lunch? No, learn something. The entire history of Spain for 1,000 years is in that building. It's exciting.
You could do that for all the big cathedrals, I'm thinking now, Anne.
My daughter wants me to do Notre Dame. Because that one really kills me. When
Mm.
people walk into the building like this, and I'm going to say, no, look up. This is really cool. Let me
Mm.
tell you about this tympanum.
Could you also do the one in Barcelona for me? I just finally got to go to La Sagrada when I went to
there's so much
Barcelona.
about that, though, you know. And I think once you talked about Gaudi, I don't think there's a lot of people associated with that building. I could be wrong.
I don't know, but wow, what a beautiful building.
Yeah, Burgos intrigues me, and I wouldn't mind spending some quality time in Burgos. I really love that town.
Burgos is one of my favorite places on the Frances. Like,
yeah, I don't know how I would get past El Cid, though. I would just write about him.
Probably, but there's a lot of history in that place. I mean, just all the little sections, and you could have a big book on that. Look at me giving you more work. Well, I have no idea how long
I'm writing a new book.
Yes, you're writing your new book. Do you want to tell everyone what the title is going to be, or what are your working title, or when will it be out?
It's the working title is something like Walking in Winter, because I really do have a lot of things that I want to say about walking in winter. Good. And I don't want to be that guy that does my spiritual journey where I just say, and then I got up in the morning and had breakfast and did da 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 da. Right. But I do want to tell some of the stories of the people that I met. That's the people again. I want to tell the stories of the people that I met in November and December, and then marry it up with how to do this successfully.
Oh, perfect. Well, I know that everybody has listened to this interview today is going to want to get that book as well as your other books. And I didn't start my timer, but I know we've gone way over our hour, I think, which is way okay, because I think you have so much to offer pilgrims that not only have never walked yet and want to, but even for all those pilgrims that have walked, because, I feel like I just keep learning so much more. And I think it's going to make each Camino thereafter even a richer experience. I think the more you know about the history of the Camino, or about the people that have walked before us, it just makes it even more special. So thank you for taking time out of your life to write this book and to share this. I mean, you're fantastic in sharing things in the Facebook groups, and it's just a joy to know you, Anne. So
I want to thank you for asking me to do this too. This has just been a delight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I'll have the show links, everyone. I will have links to Anne's books, and please check those out. And Anne, if you'll stay on, I'll just say goodbye to everyone. And until next time, buen camino. Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. I am free as a bird now, with my feathered wings. I am free as a bird now, with my feathered